All right. Greetings. My name is Craig Smyser. I am with Five Realty and going to be leading a webinar tonight on how to protest your property tax appraisal. I'm in Travis County, do a lot of work in Williamson and Hayes counties, but really these principles will apply all across the state of Texas. And I've been doing these. Well, first of all, I'm a real estate agent, almost 25 years doing that. I've been doing these workshops for since 2010, right? So I did them in person for a long time. 2020 hit, we took it online. Now we do it both in person and online. So this is being recorded. We'll put it up on YouTube for folks to watch later on. This evening, this usually takes about an hour. If you've got any questions, go ahead and put them on the Q&A tab, not the chat one, but the Q&A one. And most likely I am going to save those till the end to take a look at those. So really want to start out, first of all, just by giving you kind of a brief history of why we do these or how the appraisal districts are set up. Prior to 1979, every taxing entity in a county assessed properties on their own. So, if you would have your school district would appraise your property, and your city would appraise it, the county would appraise it, water districts and emergency service districts, everyone would appraise it, right? And that led to some problems. So what they finally said is, hey, we're going to create these central appraisal districts, one in each county, and they're responsible for appraising each property, and then all the taxing entities will use that number. So that's how we've got up with this. And, I think it actually works pretty well. It's not that I necessarily like the numbers they come up with, but that's the way the system works. Two components to your tax bill. First of all is what your property is worth. So the appraisal, and we're going to talk about that tonight. That's tonight's subject. If you're unhappy with the appraisal you get, you can protest it. That's the reason for our webinar. The other component of your tax bill, of course, is the tax rate. Tax rates are going to be set around August, September timeframe, and those are set by the governing bodies of all the taxing entities. So if you're not happy with your tax rate, that you fix in how you vote. All right. So I want to talk briefly a bit kind of about what the market has been doing in 2023 to set the stage for what our values are for this year. What they're trying to do is theoretically peg the value of each property to January 1. So that theoretically is the date that everyone is valued at. And so to do that, they're looking at what happened in 2023. I'm in the Austin area, so I'm going to use Austin area numbers. These are specific if we look at Travis and Williamson counties. If we take all the sales that occurred in the MLS in 2022 and compare them to all the sales that occurred in 2023, then the median price was down 11.1%. All right. If we look at TCAD, what the Travis Central Appraisal District did is they say that with all the appraisals they've issued for this year, the average appraisal dropped 7%. Williamson County did not provide that data the last time I checked, so I don't know what their average is. So we're talking about the way we measured as real estate agents, the median price was down about 11%. Travis Central Appraisal District says the average of their values was down 7%. They're all actually all over the map. Mine was down 15% this year. I have clients who were up 15, one was as high as 18% increase from last year's value. So they are kind of all over the map. So let's look at then some of the terminology that we're going to be talking about tonight. First of all, you're always going to see the word appraisal on the documentation you get from the appraisal district. Sometimes I'm going to call it an assessment. Those are the same thing. It's just kind of just some of the nomenclature I use. And then you've got the value on your return or your form that they send you in the mail or when you look at it online. And these sometimes can be a little different. And so I'm going to reference Travis County since it's the biggest county here in the Austin area. But Travis County labels a full market or the fair market value. Let me actually double check what they call it. They just call it market value, right? And so that is what you are appraised at. Then there's another number next to it, and that one is called the net appraised value. And that's the number that you're actually going to be taxed upon. And that is impacted by kind of a variety, by really the predominant factor is going to be if you have a homestead exemption in place. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So you will also hear me refer to that net appraised value as the taxable value, because that's the amount that you're going to be taxed upon when the time comes for your tax bill to be put together. Now, one of the things I want to point out is for a lot of people, if for people who bought their house before 2021, you've got a homestead exemption as your primary residence. You've got a homestead exemption in place. You've got this 10% cap. And yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little further later. But for those people, you definitely still have a difference, or you should still have a difference between the market value and your net appraised value. That net appraised value is lower. When we talk tonight about whether or not you should protest, I don't really care what your market value is if you fall into this category. I care about what your net appraised value is. Let's just take an example. Let's say that your market value is $500,000. And let's say your house is worth $450,000. Okay, that's the number we all can agree that your house was worth on January 1 was $450,000. But because of the homestead exemption and how it's been raising your taxable value over the last few years, currently your taxable value is $400,000. So 500 is the market value, 450 is what your house is really worth, and then 400 is what you're being taxed upon. I see no reason for you to protest, because you've got to get that 500 to below 400 before you're going to save any money on your tax bill, right? I don't care if you get it down to 450. I don't care if you get it down to 425. Your tax bill is the same. So why waste your time? All right. There are some people who are going to say, well, then I've got a lower value for next year. Guess what? Doesn't matter. They don't look at last year's value when they are determining your market value the next year. All right. It would come into play if you've got the homestead, but again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you can get it lowered if it doesn't impact your bill. But if you disagree and you want to go protest, feel free. But I don't see the point unless you're going to save any money on your tax bill. All right, so let's talk about these exemptions that I've mentioned a bit already. The main one is your homestead exemption. And this is for your primary residence, okay? It does not apply to investment property, doesn't apply to a second home. It's the house in which you spend most of your time, right? I don't know that there's any particular number here in Texas. If there is, I've kind of forgotten that, but it's your primary residence, all right? So you get several benefits of this. First of all, a number of the taxing entities will reduce your taxable value before they multiply it by the tax rate. By state law, every school district has to give you a $100,000 exemption. So let's say again that your house is appraised at $500,000. Let's just say that's the net appraised value, right? So the taxable value is $500,000. Every school district is going to drop $100,000 off. So now you're at $400,000, and that is what your tax rate is multiplied by. Now in Travis County, they'll give you a 20% exemption. So that's going to be the same number. It's still also going to be $100,000, but Travis County is 20%. Williamson County is not that high, but each of the taxing entities may give you an exemption like that. Not all of them do. Okay, a lot of water districts, things like that, don't do that. But anyway, so that benefits you because it takes your taxable value and reduces it by something before they multiply it by the tax rate. Now, the other component is that your homestead cannot then rise, your taxable number cannot rise by more than 10% each year. In most years, that's really irrelevant because our values don't go up that much. But if you look back at 2021, when the Austin area was up 41%, 2022 started out real strong, before slowing down after the interest rates. And so we find ourselves that, again, people who own their house before 2021, they still each year are incrementally going up, and they haven't reached market value yet because the values jumped so quickly. So while that was very helpful then, frankly, in most years in Texas history, that 10% was higher than the market would rise. But those are the two advantages of the homestead exemption. Now, the homestead exemption, you only have to apply for it once, and you do it with your central appraisal district. Most of the time you can do it online. You can also fill out the paper form and mail it in. But you do it once, and once it's applied to your property, you have it until it's no longer your homestead. There are a couple of time frames that you're eligible for it. So if you bought a house in 2023 that already had a homestead exemption on it from the previous owner, that homestead stayed on all year. So you were not allowed to apply for yours until January 1. They say that the deadline is April 30th, but that's not really true because they will take it going back several years. So if you're on this call and you bought your house in 2022 and you don't have it on yet, go ahead and apply today and ask them to put it on for 2022. Now, 2 years is about as far back as Travis County goes. I don't know about other counties. Williamson also is about 2 years. But just be sure you have your homestead if you're entitled to it. All right. Now, if you bought a house last year, if you buy a house at any time that doesn't already have a homestead exemption on it, so you bought a new construction house, or you bought a house that someone had used previously as an investment property or a second home, you buy it, there's no homestead on it, you can apply immediately for that homestead exemption. Now, when I say immediately, I mean after you changed your address on your license, because that's part of the application is you have to submit your Texas driver's license that matches the address of the house you bought. So once you've done that, you can apply for your homestead exemption, and it will begin to apply in the year that you bought your house. Okay. So let me just check my notes here. Yeah, I think I've mentioned everything about the homestead that I wanted to say. Let's talk briefly about the 65 and over. I'm not sure who on this call might be 65 years or older, but if that's your group, you can get the 65 and over exemption. What that does is it freezes the school district tax at the nominal dollar amount it is when you get that exemption applied. So let's say that you're paying $5,000 to the school district in the year you turn 65, you get your exemption. Then you will never pay more than $5,000 to the school district while you own that home. Doesn't matter what the value of the home goes up to because of appreciation. Doesn't matter if they raise the tax rate on it. You'll never pay more than $5,000. If for some reason things go down and you're calculated, say, at $4,500, then you pay $4,500. Things go back up, you'll never go above the $5,000. Okay. Now, if that would change, let's say you added a pool. Okay, that increases the value of your home, so that they're going to factor that in, and that new value has to be added and accounted for. But for most people, it's just never going to rise above that number. So that's the over 65. There are also disabled veteran exemptions. I'm not going to get much into it other than to say that it varies upon your level of VA disability percentage. So if that is your category, go ahead and look into that. And just make sure you've got all the exemptions you're entitled to on there. I have helped several people over the last few years who just never knew about the homestead exemption, and they owned their house, before 2021, and all of a sudden their tax bill almost doubled from one year to the next. So I've helped probably 5 or 6 people get that all squared away and saved probably cumulatively between the folks we've helped, I bet over $30,000. So that's why I'm so, we just want to make sure you have the exemptions that you're entitled to. All right, so let's talk about the 2023 property tax reforms. Last year, when we were at this time of year and we were doing these presentations, we didn't they hadn't finalized it, but they have now. So let me just mention it. The biggest one I actually already mentioned, and that was the exemption for a homestead from the school district. I mentioned it's $100,000. Prior to the bill passing last year, it was 40,000. So that was a big increase for that. Another component was that what we call tax rate compression. They sent, I think it was $12 billion more to the schools last year. And as a requirement, they all had to lower their tax rate. So tax rate compression. So let's just say a school district was at 1.2, maybe they then came down to 1.11. I don't know the exact formula off the top of my head, but that was part of that bill. So more exemption, lower tax rate. And then there's one other thing I'm going to mention as I'm, we're filming this on May 2nd. On May 4th, there are elections going on all across the state for the appraisal districts. Okay, so every county's got one. And what this did was it added 3 elected positions to these board of directors. So they're comprised now of 9 people, 5 of whom are appointed by the large taxing entities in that county. So in Travis County, it's going to be AISD, City of Austin, the county itself. They get to appoint members. And then the county tax collector, by default, is an ex officio member of the board. And now there are 3 elected officials. So I think this is going to be a very low information, low turnout campaign all across Texas for these positions. But early voting's done, so you have to go on Saturday. But take a look at that for your county if you are interested. But that gives you the ability to get a few people on there. I still am not a big fan of this setup, right? I already told you that 5 of them are from the taxing entities. So these are the people who get the money, and they're appointing the people who oversee all the appraisals and everything like that. It's like the fox's garden, the hen house sort of thing. But it is what it is. We'll take what we can get. All right, so those were the main changes from last year. There were some others, but those were the main ones that I wanted to mention this evening. All right, so I'm not sure who on the webinar or watching on YouTube bought a house in 2023, but we're going to address those first because those are very easy protests. So if you bought a house in 2023 and you're looking at your 2024 appraisal, and the appraised value is higher than what you paid, easy peasy. You're going to file a protest, and you're going to take your closing statement that you got from the title company on closing day, and you're just going to submit that to them as your evidence. And they're going to look at that, and you're going to say, okay, you bought a house in June and you paid $400,000 for it, so we shouldn't be appraising you at $450,000, right? It's a very easy one to do, especially because last year, like I said, overall values in the Austin area came down. So, I mean, maybe if anything, they ought to give you one that's a little bit lower than what you paid. And I do have a client who already protested this year with that, and they were given a value a little bit less than they had paid for their house over last summer. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a common thing, but you should at least be able to get it down to what you paid for it. Very easy this year when you're making that protest. Now, let's say that you paid $450 for your house and you're appraised at $400. Well, then just leave it alone. Don't try to do anything different because they know you bought your house, and the first thing they're going to ask you is what you pay for it. So don't mess with it that way. I don't think it's worth it because guess what? They can raise your valuation when you protest. It's not a super common thing, but I have seen it done. I have known people who have come to these webinars. People who have come, we do the in-person sessions. And they'll raise their hand and be like, yep, that happened to me. So don't let it happen to you. If you're appraised less than what you paid for your house last year, just be happy about it. All right. Okay. So that's what I want to mention for if you bought last year. So let's get into the actual protest itself. There are 2 main methods by which you're going to protest. And the first one is what we call market value. And it's the one I think most people are familiar with. And this is, they've given you a valuation that you believe is higher than the true market value of your house from January 1. That's a lot of what we're talking about tonight. As a real estate agent, that's how I can help you, right? If you're on here, you're watching it on YouTube, and you're like, yeah, I know that they're higher, but I just don't have the comps to prove it. Go ahead and reach out to me, and we'll go ahead and help you get that set up. Now, this is only, if you're in the Austin area. I can't help you in Houston, can't help you in Dallas. I know people do watch from around the state on these things. So just want to make sure if you're in the Austin area, be happy to help you out with that, whether you should be protesting or not, and what the comps are that you can use to do that. So you can find my, just search me, you find my contact information. Wherever you will launch this video, it's probably there. All right, so we're going to then mention quickly the second one. And this is what we call an assessment comparison, or what are they calling it now? Hold on. They are now calling it, hold on, because I thought they used a different terminology. Yes. Travis County is calling it not equal / uniform with others. So not equal, uniform with others. I often call it just the fairness method. So here's how this one works. Regardless of what your valuation is compared to the market. So let's say that we know your house is worth $450,000 and that you're assessed at $450,000. But you start to look and find out that your neighbors with similar homes are all appraised by the county at $400,000. You're $50,000 above them. Even though you're at market value, your neighbors are all under market value. That's unfair. And the state of Texas says you can protest based on the fairness of how you're being treated and get it lowered. And so that has nothing to do with market value. So I can't help you with that one, but you can do your research on your own. You go to the appraisal district's website, and they probably have an advanced search where you can go in and not just search for a specific address or a specific name, but you can put your street name and, streets nearby. And then you go through and you start looking for houses that are similar to yours. All right. You want ones that are similar in size. If you have some sort of view, you back to a green belt or something like that, you want to take that into account. But if you can identify, not just one, don't go in with one home and think that that's going to do it. You need to be able to establish that, hey, compared to these several homes, I'm overvalued. Then that is another method to get it lowered. So again, I can't help you with that one. That's research that you do on your own, but it is completely independent of market value. All right. Now, I do want to mention, I'll mention it again in a little bit, but I'll reiterate here. When you're filling out your protest form, they're going to ask you what method is it that you are under, what method are you protesting? And you don't have to pick just one. So I always say, when you're making your protest, check both boxes. The one that in Travis County is labeled appraised value exceeds market, and the other one that says not equal / uniform with others. Check them both. That way, when you do your protest, you've reserved the right to do it either way. Because if you only check one, once you get to the protest, that's the only way you can do it. So check more than one when you're doing that. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen a little bit. And again, I have access to Travis County because that's where I live. Your county is going to look a little bit different. But in general, I would expect that the process is much the same. So let me go ahead and do the share screen here. Find the right one that I need to share. Here we go. So I've already logged in and I've gone in to create a protest for my house. All right. Now, I actually am not protesting this year because while they, because of the 10%, they've got me valued from a taxable value less than what my house is worth. So I don't have to do it this year. But here I mentioned those reasons, right? If it was me doing this, I would check both of those. Now, here's an interesting one. They are asking, what is my opinion of the property's value? Now, interestingly enough, the state doesn't require this value. And if you fill out the paper form to do your protest, this is an optional field. But you're doing it online, they make it required. I don't know if other counties do it this way, and I don't know what justification Travis County has by requiring it, but you have to put a value in there. I prefer the method of not putting it in because I have personally, including other people have told me the same thing, but personally, I've gone into protest thinking, oh, I want it at X. That's what I think is appropriate. And they've offered me lower than X. So that's why I don't like the idea of telling them right up front what my opinion of the value is, but it's required if you want to do it online. Like I said, you can always fill out the paper form and mail it in. Here are some spots where you can put some comments regarding your property's value, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about how you should do that and the numbers that I can provide you. But this is where you would put a little bit of information. You're going to have the chance to make an attachment and upload that. And that's really where the bulk of your argument should be. But you can put a little bit here. Not required, but you certainly can put some here. Now are some other interesting questions as you go through, right? They're going to ask you if you want an informal hearing first. I always suggest yes on this. There was a time that they did their informals differently, and I would not suggest doing it, but for the last couple of years, absolutely, I think you should put yes here as you're going through. You want an informal hearing. They're going to ask you if you're going to do your ARB hearing. That's the formal hearing. And I know we're going to discuss these in a little bit, but I'm doing it while I'm up here. I'll have this up in front of it. Whether you're going to submit an affidavit, do it in person, whether you want to do it on the phone or by video conference. So you're going to choose that there. Whether you want, a hearing reminder that they would email to you. Here's an interesting one. I've only done a formal hearing in front of a 3-member panel, which is a regular one, or you can choose a single member. I don't have a preference on it. I've never done a single member. I think it's probably just the luck of the draw, right? In a 3 panel, you just need to convince 2 of them in order to win. In a single panel, you've got to convince 100%. The one person's got to be the one to go for you. So, pick that there. And then how do you want to be notified? I think most people are going to take electronic. I presume that no one here has got a property valued at more than 52 million. Here is something that's very important. You want to check the box where you're requesting the Central Appraisal District's evidence. That is going to be very important because what they do with that is that they are going to share with you all the data that they've put together and how they came up with that value. See, as you can imagine, most of this is done without a human looking at it. By the time it comes to an appraisal, that's probably the first time a human has looked at it. And so you just want to, make sure that you're getting to see the evidence they put together. And they're going to send you a packet, and it's going to show you which homes they compared you to. And there's going to be other things in there, adjustments that they've made. Maybe you don't have a pool, and one of the houses they compared to had a pool, so they got to lower the value of that one. Maybe your house is larger than someone else's, or you have a view and someone else doesn't. So they make those adjustments, and all that information is available to you before you go and do your protest. So just want to make sure that you check that box so you get that information. So the good news is, at least in Travis County, it's relatively easy to file the protest, right? And I presume other counties are pretty typical that way as well. The deadline for most of us is May 15th. So they sent most of them out in time frame that the May 15 deadline works because they have to give you at least 30 days. Now, no county sends out every appraisal at the same time. There's a giant portion that goes out at the front, and then they send out the remainder over a couple of weeks. So if you didn't get yours in that first batch, if you got one later, on your form, it's going to have a different date besides May 15. But just make sure you file by the date that's on your appraisal that they sent you. All right. Want to go over a couple of things that work in for all the protests, whether you're going to do an informal hearing first or just go straight to your formal. So let me address things that are in common to both of them. Again, we already mentioned if you purchased it last year, go ahead and just submit your closing statement. If you have a recent appraisal, I don't remember the exact time frame. It's either 3 months or 6 months. If you've had an appraisal done, you can submit that if the appraisal is lower than what they came up with. With that, Couple of things. I think most people don't have them anymore, right? We are not in a time frame where people are refinancing. So it's unlikely that you probably have one of those, an appraisal sitting around. And I certainly would not hire an appraiser to do this for you. They would eat up most of, probably more than any of the savings you would actually realize in your pocket. All right. But you can do that. As we're going to talk about, how you compare your house to others, and with the data that I can provide to you, but we're never take into account foreclosures or short sales. Now, there are very few of those in the market these days, so I doubt that you would even come across one anyway. But those should not be used. Also, you're not going to use a transaction if it's not arm's length, right? What do I mean? Well, let's say your next door neighbor has a house similar to yours, and they just sold it to one of their kids last year at a below market value, or maybe above market value if they're trying to help out their parents, one or the other. That's not an arm's length transaction. It needs to be something that was listed for sale. Buyers had an opportunity to see it. A non-related party made an offer and bought the house. That's almost every sale that we see. You've got to use those. Can't use something that's not arm's length. Another thing you want to do is make sure, as you go into your protest, that all the data they have about your house is correct. That it's not a whole lot larger than your house really is. Or that they don't. Travis County doesn't count bedrooms, but they do count bathrooms. Make sure that's correct. Just make sure everything looks accurate. Now, they're going to be a little bit off. A builder might say the house is 3,000 square feet, and the appraiser who appraised your house when you bought it might have measured it at 3,050 square feet. And maybe the appraisal district has it at 3,040 square feet. That sort of small difference isn't going to matter. So what I'm talking about is, your house is a couple hundred square feet too high versus what the house actually is, and you're overpaying. Then you're going to want to contact them, and they're probably not going to come out during this busy protest season, but they'll send someone out to actually measure the house. And so just make sure that your data is correct, or at least in your favor, right? If there's an error in your favor, don't say anything about it, of course. When you are collecting the comps that you're going to submit, make sure you're getting a good representation of homes that are nearby. This is whether you're doing the market value or the fairness comparison method, simply because there's really they're not going to look at just one house, right? They look at a bunch of homes and they expect you to bring evidence for a number of homes. So if one house is in your favor, but the rest aren't, you're not going to win. So just make sure you select a nice representation of the homes that you're going to use in your protest. And one other thing I'm going to mention, kind of a little tip: try to protest later, right? There are the people who bought last year, right? Those are easy protests, so they send them in and their values are changed. All these companies that do this professionally, the first ones that they send in are the slam dunk easy ones, because once they get some other values lowered, then that gives them low values that they can use to their advantage for other ones, for the ones that might be a little more marginal as to whether they will get a reduction. So that's what I say, is try to maybe go a little bit later. Unless you have a slam dunk, then please help everybody else out and send it in sooner. All right, so let's talk about the two types of protests, right? So the informal, this is one where you're just going to be visiting with an appraiser at the appraisal district. Okay, so I'm going to presume you do it in person, but again, you can do it on the phone, or you can do it through Zoom or teleconference, whatever method they use. So you're going to go in, and you've already uploaded your evidence pack to them, and they've given you theirs, and you had a chance to review them. And so you're going to sit down with them, and you're basically going to lay out your argument. You're going to say, hey, I saw that you used this house and this house and this house. They're not the best ones to use. Let me show you why these houses are better. You're going to do that. And then here's another thing, right? Because when we report the sale of a home in Texas, when the documents are recorded at the county, it doesn't include a price. We're what's known as a non-disclosure state. So we don't report to the government what you paid for a house. Yes, the MLS has that number, has all those numbers in there. So you come to me and I give you, the sales that occurred in your neighborhood that are relevant for you, and you go to the appraisal district and they know those homes sold, but maybe they don't know what the sales price is. And so you show them this, and they're going to look at those sheets that I have provided, and they're going to update their systems. And sometimes you go in, they update those because they didn't have the real sales price. They just kind of guessed at what they are. Now you've given them the real ones, and they may actually just say to you, hey, well, with that data, we're going to drop you 20,000 because that's how we've recalculated. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Other times, it's really you kind of to demonstrate why what they picked is incorrect and they should use yours. So anyway, so you're going back and forth with this individual, and they will then offer you a value. And it might be the same thing. They might say, we're not changing it, or they may give you another value. And then you have to make the decision, do you accept that value? Now, you don't have to do it, at least in Travis County, you don't have to do it right while you're sitting there. They'll, post it to your online platform, and then you can log in and you can say yes or no. So let's say that you agree with their new valuation, they've lowered it, and you agree and you accept it. Great, you're all done. That's your value. That's your valuation for the year, and you're good to go. But let's say you're not happy with it. You disagree. And you're like, no, I'm not. I know that my house is worth less, so I don't accept it. Now I want a formal hearing. All right. So what's going to happen with that? You let them know you want a formal hearing. You're then going to wait. You're going to get notified of a day and time that your hearing is going to be. Again, whether it's in person or on the phone or teleconference, doesn't really matter. That's the way it's going to go. But they send you the date. If it, let's say you're out of town or something, you can reschedule it. But anyway, otherwise you're going to report at that time. So when you go in for that, what happens is that let's say you've picked the 3-panel, which is the most traditional. You go in and there are 3 people. They're essentially the judge and jury all rolled in together. And you're going to sit down in front of them. And also in the room with you is a representative from the appraisal district. And they're going to do some things. They got to swear you in. You're going to tell the truth. They have to read some statutory language. They're going to take care of all of that. And then they're going to ask you, do you want to present first, or do you want the appraisal district to present first? I usually present first when I do it. And again, I lay out my arguments. Why is it that what they have selected, the houses they've used, are not the correct ones, or they haven't adjusted correctly for them? And you lay out your argument. Now, they should already have it because you will have uploaded it as part of your original evidence. But at the ARB level, they haven't seen it. They have it, now that as soon as you've walked in the room, they can have that information, but they haven't looked at it. So you got to give your argument. Then the person from the appraisal district is going to have their turn. Now, I've had it before where I was at an informal and got nothing. I go to the formal hearing, I present my case, and the guy sitting there says, the appraisal district agrees with him, grant him what he's asking for. That has happened, doesn't always happen. So let's say now they're like, okay, they present their argument to the appraisal review board. And then then you have a chance to rebut them since you went first. So you got a minute to rebut them. And then they just sit there right in front of you and they talk about it. And they may say, no, he's wrong. Let's side with the appraisal district, and that's their ruling. Or they may decide if at least 2 of them want to lower it, great, you're going to get lowered. And then they're going to talk about, what price it should be at. And then they're going to present it to you. And that you have to decide while you're sitting there, then and there, whether you accept it or not. If they've lowered it, you're probably going to accept whatever it is, because let me tell you the next step. If you don't like what the ARB has to say, the Appraisal Review Board, your next level of protest is to file a suit in district court. Now, for those of us who own homes, the amount of dollars it costs to do that is going to be more than we're going to save on our taxes. So for most practical purposes, for a residential home, the ARB is the end of the line. Now, commercial properties, think of a building in downtown Austin, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. they're doing district court. They're probably going to go beyond that if they need to. So, but for us, what the ARB says is really the end of the line. Okay. Couple of things I want to mention that I think I left off here. Back to the informal. When you protested in Travis County, as you saw me go through there, you could tell them, hey, I want an informal, and they would assign a day and time for you. The other thing you can do is you can always just get onto their website, and they have a button to get in the queue. You get in the queue, and then sometime that day you'll have your hearing, and they'll give you a pretty good idea of it. So those are the methods. Again, I can't speak for all the counties, but if you get on your appraisal district website, you'll get all that information on there. So let's talk a bit about, right? So you want to protest and you're in the Austin area, reach out to me, 512-650-7300 or Craig at realestateinaustin.com. And, give me your address, your name, tell me a bit about, what your story is. I'll be able to pull up what they've got you appraised at. I'll be able to pull up some comps for it, and I'll tell you whether or not I think you have a shot at it. And then what I'll do is I'm going to put together a little electronic packet, send you a PDF that's got comparable sales that you could use. I'll let you know whether I think you got a chance at getting it or not, but at least you'll have some of the data and you can see why I think what I do, and you can do with it as you choose. So that's really the process of getting that information. Couple of things, couple of more tips. Don't talk about price per square foot. They don't really like that number down at the appraisal district. So don't compare price per square foot from your house and other houses around. The best thing to do is make just simple adjustments using dollar values. Okay, they have a 3-car garage. I have a 2-car garage, and I think that's $10,000. Or they have a view, I don't have a view, and that's worth X amount of dollars. That's the way you want to talk about it. Don't give them a CMA from someone like me. You'll hear me mention I'm not providing you with a CMA, a comparable market analysis, competitive market analysis, however you want to refer to it. Most real estate agents can prepare these and give them to you. The appraisal district won't look at it, right? That's why I give you the actual sheets from the MLS so that you can give it to them, because they'll use that as the proof of what those homes sold for. A couple other things. Doesn't matter what your neighbor's house looks like. Some people go in and say, hey, my house is not worth that much because my neighbor's is a pit. They've got cars jacked up in the front yard. The grass is dead. The house is in disrepair. So that lowers the value of my home. While that's true when you're selling your house, under Texas law, that's not considered when valuing your property. So don't try to use that argument. Generally, you want to talk about median price, not the average price. So talk more in median prices. And one other thing, if there are deficiencies with your house, let's say you have something wrong with your foundation or your roof, a big expense like that, bring proper documentation, and they will generally make an adjustment for that. So let's say that you had a bad roof, and you replaced it in February, and it cost you $25,000. You can show them, hey, on January 1, my roof was a mess. I paid $25,000 for it. They should lower that down. Now, this doesn't go for little things. We're talking really, foundation, roof, major components that they might make an adjustment for. Obviously, if you had like a fire or something like that, you want to make sure they're all aware of that so that you're paying taxes appropriately on what that house should have been valued at its current condition on January 1. If you appeal, if you do a protest, let me know how it turns out. I really do, like to know how things are going. I've got a couple of questions here I'm going to get to in just a minute, but 45 minutes, that's generally what I try to get all my prepared remarks in that time. So let me go ahead and take a look at some questions. What happens if I only checked one of the 2 boxes? Can I go back and select them again? Is there a way to reset my protest fields? I don't know if there is a way to do that. I really don't. You'd have to call the appraisal district and find out. All right, and then let's see another one. I found a couple of houses. They're same model as mine, being appraised less than mine. They have a view. I don't have a view. Where is the point where disputing is not worth it? All right. So we've got a situation here where your house doesn't have a view and they do. So their house should be worth more. However, they're all appraised at $20,000 to $30,000 less. And the question is, at what point is it worth it to do this? That's a question that you have to answer, right? So let's say that your tax rate is about 2%, okay? And you're able to get them to lower it $30,000. All right. So now you're looking at, what is that? $600 that you would save if you could do that, right? And so you have to decide, is that worth it to me? So if it is, then go ahead and do it. If it's not, don't worry about it. You think it's going to come down 10,000 and it's not worth your time? That's really just a personal question, right? Those are actually the only two questions in here right now. I will stick around as long as people have questions and continue to answer them. As long as people are here and on the line, I'm happy to do it. Other than that, again, my name is Craig Smyser. I'm with 5 Realty and based here in Austin, serve Travis County, Williamson County, northern part of Hayes, sometimes the eastern part of Burnett or something like that, but that's generally the area that I do. If you have questions that you didn't ask here, feel free to reach out to me personally. Again, 512-650-7300. The email is craig@realestateinAustin.com. And that's going to be it. I'll wait just a little bit more, another minute or two, to see if anyone on here has got questions. I see people are jumping off at a pretty quick pace, but I'll answer any questions that continue. If you're getting off, I appreciate you spending some time with me this evening, and hope you got out of this, got answers to your questions that were worthwhile, and that it was worth your time to be here. So thanks again. Again, I'll just monitor here for a little bit longer on any questions that pop up. Don't see any others coming through, so I am going to go ahead and say that we have either I did a good job, or a lot of people on the call realized at some point, since they've owned their home for more than a few years, before the values really shot up, that they don't have a good reason to protest. See, I think a lot of people this year shouldn't be protesting. I know a lot of people will because it's easy to protest, but I think for most people, because of that 10% cap keeping them lower than market value, I think for a lot of people, it's not going to be worth it. Again, that's market value based. If you want to go ahead and do it on the fairness method, the comparison method, feel free to check that out and go that route. All right, no more questions. Appreciate it, everybody. Y'all have a good evening, and good luck if you protest.